So much of life really is about decisions. There are decisions all the time in life. And in fact, the quality of how we experience life can sometimes, or you could say, could be mapped against our ability to flow in our decisions. And yet so many of us can feel lost and confused when it comes to all the sort of little decisions of life, all the big decisions of life. And even if we're good at decisions, there's always room to refine and review how we make them. And in this episode, I'm going to be looking at your guiding lights. How do you find your guiding lights? Because when you have guiding lights in your life, those decisions can become so much easier. Sound good? Well, let's get into it. Hit it, Kim.
Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. I'm delighted you're here. If you're brand new, I'm so glad that you have found us. And if you're back for more, I love that you come back and give me some ear space in your week to go and pontificate and hopefully share things with you that help improve your life, help you become a more brilliant human. And if you haven't already, then make sure you go ahead and download the MPA worksheet. Again, if you're new here, you're probably going, what the heck is MPA? MPA is a simple 6-line spoken word process that helps you stop taking things so personally. It's a bit like taking you from a life where you're like one of those beaten up old frying pans with all the non-stick gone and egg gets stuck on it. The stuff of life sticks to you. And MPA is like Teflon for the soul. It allows you to apply a beautiful layer of non-stick to your life. So the stuff of life that really needs to go down the waste disposal can go where it belongs and leave you shiny, new and fresh to interact with life. And the MPA process is where it all starts, and you can get hold of that on my main website, Joel Young NPA, that's NovemberPapaAlpha.com, or go to the beabrillianthuman.com website. And of course, if you want to find any of, notes for this episode or any of the previous episodes, you just need to put beabrillianthuman.com / then the number of the episode. So for today's show notes, it would be www.beabrillianthuman.com / 59, and you can get the notes for the show and all the links and stuff that I mention. So what are we talking about today? Well, decisions, really. Now, I've kind of covered, in one sense, the topic of decisions and those kind of things in a couple of other episodes, but in very different ways. And I wanted to come back to it today. So, for example, back in episode 5, there was what was actually a very popular episode called Making the Decision to Let Go. And that was focusing on sort of the idea of decision pressure and was helping understand how to take the friction out of that. So, and how to communicate or connect with your inner decision maker. So that's one aspect of it in in one of those pressurized situations. How can you get access to the decision maker inside of you? It's a great episode, episode 5. Again, the show notes for that, www.beabrillianthuman.com / 5 will get you there. And then later on in episode 33, I was talking about how to handle uncertainty and flow, which again, the focus there in terms of, because that is kind of about decisions and uncertainty, and the whole aspect of that was more about becoming present and getting out of the future thinking that can get you all tangled up, especially, and also about when you're really craving or seeking certainty, which can, for some people, can be like an ongoing life experience. So that was designed to help there. But they're both really good episodes that kind of if this episode particularly resonates with you, they're great episodes to go to. So again, for episode 33, www.beabrillianthuman.com/33, and you can have a listen to that. And of course, they'll both be linked in today's show notes. So in this episode today, I'm looking at it from a slightly different angle, because in a sense, as I said in that intro, life is really about decisions. Decisions happen all the time. And one of the principles, we're going to talk about the principles that I live by, is the idea of how can I help people to navigate the waters of life. And this episode very much is about finding your navigators. You could say the things that help you get clarity on the decisions, so that as you go through a life which is decision after decision, you have some awareness of what are the key things that will be like your rudder and the navigators that help you be clearer than you might otherwise be on what is the best decision to make in any given situation. So I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to give you, first of all, kind of an overview of where I'm coming from and how it maps to many other people's. There's lots of different words that we use for this kind of thing. I like to use guiding lights because it's encompasses all the different aspects that you might come across that sounds familiar here. But I'm going to give you a general overview of where I'm coming from and why it's important, why it matters. And then we'll get into sort of the best guidance I can give you really on how you can find your guiding lights in different situations. So let's drill down a bit. What do I mean by your guiding lights? Well, first of all, why is it important to have some kind of rudder or navigator or something that gives you clarity on decision making? Well, when you know what matters to you, when you know what's important, you can set these things up in a way where they are alive in you to the degree that you don't necessarily have to consciously ask yourself a series of questions or bring awareness to the various nature of your guiding lights. Once you become conscious of them and practice them, they just become part of your being. But the first step is always to become conscious. If we don't really know what matters to us, if we don't really know what those guiding lights are, then it's like we have to reinvent the wheel every single time that we face a decision. And that can lead us to all sorts of things like being confused by other people's opinions and sort of input from various research, because in a sense, we don't know ourselves and what matters to us. So in a way, your guiding lights are a map really, or sort of sticking the flag in certain areas, in certain contexts, that help you connect to you and what matters to you and what your values are, those kind of things. So speaking of values, that's one of the words that is often used for these. So it's like, I could think of them as your guiding lights as your principles, your values. It could be your metrics. You know, what are the metrics that are important to you? You could think of them as underlying mantras, or perhaps they come as questions, or even thinking of them as mindsets. So there's all these different words that I'm grouping together as your guiding lights. Now, one of the things to say about them is that there may be different guiding lights you have in different contexts. So there may be things that are in say a work context where you know your guiding lights around decision there. There may be guiding lights around relationships or guiding lights around general decisions. So this isn't something that I can necessarily sort of map out in an easy way for you. This is part of this whole process of finding your guiding lights, is about just some self-inquiry and into what matters to you, what's important. And it is, as I always say on this program, it's like it's a discovery. Life is a discovery. And the other thing to say about them is that yes, you can find your guiding lights in different contexts or overarching guiding lights, but they're not necessarily fixed or static. I mean, they can be. I've got ones which I'll share with you in a moment, which have been with me for years and years and years. But there's always an opening to have them evolve. And, you know, as we go through life, we might find that we can tweak or improve or even throw out some of our guiding lights because, life changes. We change. What matters to us changes. We are fluid beings, really, aren't we? Changing all the time. And yet there are constancies that happen, all the way through. Let me give you an example. So I can talk a bit about some of my guiding lights, if you like. So in the sort of principles, values, metrics, mantras, questions, mindset area, mine, when I wrote them down, I thought, they actually kind of come as questions. So I often have these as alive questions within me that help me make decisions in different areas of my life. So the first one to share with you is it kind to me? Now, I talked about this and I told the story of how this came about many years ago. I talked about this in the last episode 58, which was 10 ways to handle or to deal with intense negativity. And is it kind to me? And I wrote the ebook and all these things. It's very much has been since then alive in me and is there with me today. And the principle of is it kind to me, just in case you haven't yet listened to episode 58, although it's a great episode, go listen to it, is that it was about including myself in the equation of kindness. I found that, I had a guiding principle of kindness in general, and this is a good example of how it can evolve. And then I began to realize that me focusing kindness outwardly, but not really including myself in that inquiry, just really didn't work. It wasn't ultimately kind to other people at times, and it certainly wasn't kind to me. So to me, it wasn't actually kindness in its pure form. So the question, is it kind to me, is one of my guiding lights. So if I'm asked to do something, if, and it's often action related or choice related, I'll ask, or that inward inquiry will be alive in me, is it kind to me? If it is, great. And if it's not, then it's a no. So it gives me a clear yes, no decision just from having that question alive in me. And that one really works for me. It fits all of my, it suits me. It's very much part of me. And the second one is it kind? Is it useful? So again, you'll see kindness, clearly a big value of mine, is in there. But this one I tend to use more in the sort of sharing stuff, speaking out, what I say, what I choose to say or don't choose to say, because it's one of those things where, sometimes I might sort of have a situation. I certainly had this in the past. This is where this came from, where I might have a clever idea or some knowledge, but I found it wasn't always, kind or useful to actually speak that out. So I find this a good check when it comes to whether I speak something out or sharing. I'll ask myself, is it kind? Is it useful? If the answer that comes back internally with me is yes, it's kind and it's useful, then it passes that check and I will then speak it out. Now, I don't have a life where this tape is running with everything I say, but there are times in life where I might ponder, is this something that would be good to say right now? Whether it's challenging somebody, whether it's sharing an idea, because there are times in life where someone may be just looking to be heard and not want a solution, for example. And so that's when that guiding light will sort of come up for me. Is it kind? Is it useful? And helps me be true to myself in what I choose to share. And the last one I want to share with you that's one of mine specifically is, what's the common intention? Again, you'll notice these are all for me question marks. What's the common intention? And this is kind of very much in the relational context. Now, relational, I mean, obviously with other people that I'm in relationship with, be that family or, intimate relationships, but it also works really well with relationships within myself. So my relationship to anything, really, my relationship to, maybe there's parts of me in conflict. This is a really good guiding light for me, is to ask, what's the common intention? And the reason there is because one of the things that I realized really worked for me, it helped me keep me in alignment with me and on track, was to look at what's the common intention. I'm generally conflict averse, much of my younger life I was conflict avoidant, and was scared of conflict, and I'm not scared of conflict anymore. But where it's possible to resolve things, especially without getting trapped into that kind of those circular arguments and the rock and the hard place and just the no-win fights, is I found that finding a common intention and then sort of moving forward with a solution towards a common intention is a fantastic way to, it really works for me. So often when it comes to relational decisions or certainly with conflict, this is definitely a sort of conflict-based guiding light. Then that guiding light of what is the common intention will inform the questions I ask, what I share, how I approach it, the energy I come from when I go into any kind of tricky relational situation. So I wanted to give you those as sort of my examples of how I, or to give you an idea of what I mean by guiding lights. Now, a couple of other ones that I want to share with you, and hopefully in those examples, you can see how they're really useful and powerful for me in my life. And again, this episode really is about, how can I help you to sort of become more aware, conscious of, what are your guiding lights in different situations. So one of the things that I mentioned was metrics. And you might go, what do you mean by metrics? Well, for some people or in certain situations, metrics are really good guiding lights because they let you know what is measurable, and from the measures you can make your decisions in that way. So in a business, there's measures of profitability. A company might have values or which are reflected in metrics to do with, for example, cutting down their carbon footprint might be a metric that becomes really important. There would be the profit metric, the carbon footprint metric. It may be a staff happiness metric, but by finding the metrics, they're very clear. Those metrics then are the guiding lights that define the decisions that the company makes about how it proceeds or what it does. They're really, really good. And I have a client of mine is a good example of someone who uses metrics in their life. So in their younger life, money was one of the most important metrics, and you can think of this in terms of equations and balances. In the equation of his life, to build his wealth and his money was kind of probably one of the primary guiding lights for him. So he could make decisions, do I make money versus hassle? That was the metric. And more recently, well-being has been a metric that's come in terms of the balance of whether he makes decisions about to do this job or that job. But that's a shift in the metrics, but he was always very clear on what the metrics were. And again, as we've worked together, it's become clearer and clearer that the balance has shifted. So he's weighted the metrics, but that clarity around them are really good guiding lights. And because that's the way that it works for him, metrics are something which really speak his language. It's like it's true to who he is to work by those metrics. So again, I would put those under guiding lights, but there's sort of that more specific measurable quality that goes into it. And as you go to looking at, what are your guiding lights, you might find that, principles are something that speaks to you more, of values that speaks to you more, or metrics, or, mantras or questions or mindsets. Finding your own language in a way is part of it. Because if you find that someone who likes measurement, then metrics may be a good place to start to find your guiding lights. And another client of mine who kind of was speaking this week, and it kind of inspired this episode because she's someone who is really looking at this point ahead to 2021 and, looking towards and over the time that we've worked together, we've looked at different guiding lights, different values, different things that can be a focus for her over a specific period. And she identified that there were, from working it through, coming into sort of consciousness around things, we got to a point where she sort of had three guiding lights to take her forward into 2021, which was to be, I'm giving you these examples so you can get a sense of their different flavor to mine, if you like. One was to be here and engaged. So for her, that works as a guiding light as she moves into this phase of her life. She can be mindful. She can have it alive in her, that sort of inner inquiry of, am I here and engaged? But that's a guiding light. That is something going to help me be here and engaged. That's a guiding light for her. Another important part of the puzzle there was to be, her second one was to be stimulated and relaxed, which might seem like opposites in a way. And I think I'm going to do an episode on resolving opposites, or living with polarity, or making sense of polarity. But I love that, stimulated and relaxed. There are wonderful situations where you can be both stimulated and relaxed. And for her, that gave her a real sense of taking, in a sense, her two polarized parts of her and finding that common ground. And when she uses that as a guiding light, is this going to make me feel relaxed and stimulated? Or can I help myself become more into that position where I might be highly stimulated, but am I relaxed at the same time? So in terms of guiding her or navigating her in terms of how this is like who I want to be, how do I want to be in life going forward, stimulated and relaxed is a guiding light for her. And the last one for her at this point was, self-supporting. Again, if I put that as a question, it's, am I supporting myself? Now, this one for her was very much like my "Is it kind to me?" So as someone who's generally been hugely supportive but directed that outward, she was realizing that actually to include herself in the equation of support was something which was going to be a huge, in fact, quite a transformational guiding light for her as she goes forward into this period. So again, hopefully you can see that those examples are quite different. So we've got a metric type, we've got my kind of inquiry type, which is for specific situations. And then my client with again, a different set of guiding lights, but they really, again, remember what they do. They connect her to what matters to her in a way that will help inform and make sort of decisions about what she does, who she is, where she shows up, what she shows up as, what she includes herself in, how she behaves. These guiding lights are going to be a great way for her to stay connected to herself, and that's the point of having them. I'm going to give you one more example, which is I want to talk about the guiding lights of MPA. Now, in MPA, I would call them MPA philosophies, which I didn't include in that list, but it's a valid way of thinking about guiding lights. So what are your sort of underpinning or core philosophies in your world? So in MPA, you might think MPA is about not taking things personally. So, maybe that's a guiding light for it. Is it not personal? But that's not where it comes from, which is an interesting way to look at it's not always obvious. The guiding philosophies, the core philosophies and the guiding lights for MPA, especially using MPA if I'm using it with myself, with other people, certainly with clients. Then there's three. The first one is animation is king. That's the ultimate one. So in a way, you're probably going to go, what's animation? If you've done any MPA training, and I highly recommend you do, then you'll understand animation is my word for I use the word animation in teaching MPA to describe how to find the key phrases or cookie cutters that you put into the process that make each process unique, distinct, and fits you. But animation is a principle which is about aligning with the divine movement of the universe, aligning with divine order, you might say, or with the nature of how things are. Again, there's loads of ways to language it. That's why I call it animation. But as a guiding principle, the animation is king is something which trumps all of the other, any guideline, any principle, any rule that gives you space to open to that kind of intuitive knowing and alignment with things. And it also, of course, dovetails with the other two, which are kind of supportive philosophies or guiding principles. And they kind of explain animation a bit more, I suppose, which is the second one is to be agendaless, have no agenda. I always say MPA is an agendaless way. It's the agendaless way. And definitely, if you're on the sheet, I don't really talk about that much. The basic training, which is the first place to start to get some training, kind of gets mentioned, but we don't go into it because that's really about teaching you how to use the process kind of in a practical way in your life. But as we get into the advanced training, which is now just completing the beta phase, and very, very imminently, I'm going to be opening it up to people. That's where we really get into these core philosophies. And being agendaless is one of the biggest gifts that the MPA brings as a guiding philosophy, and it's embedded into the practice. Not having an agenda means that you come into any process session, and generally as a principle for life, you take the friction out of the friction of expectation, and the friction of of that sort of will without alignment via animation to the universe. And the last one is to drop the dogma. Again, very similar in a way, because dogma is the manifestation of those expectations, rules, which leave no room for that fluidity that is the true nature of our lives. And all of those sort of guiding principles, guiding lights, the philosophies of MPA, they support us what is a deeper principle from it, which is about fluid structures. So the dance between fluidity and structure, which I believe is and certainly MPA supports the idea that we live in fluid structures. You need a certain amount of structure, but you need to have the fluidity. And things like dogma is all structure, no fluidity. Agendas invoke structure that don't take account of what is happening. They say it has to be this way, so it uses force rather than power in the sort of more divine sense. And animation is the thing which lets you know what's what in that whole equation. But MPA has these guiding lights, and again, say in the advanced training, I go much deeper with this, as well as more practically how to use MPA in all sorts of different scenarios, and all the loads of ways that you can use it in different scenarios and in different situations. But the advanced training really goes deep into being agendaless, dropping the dogma, and how to really thread animation into your life. By the way, I will put a link in to the show notes, www.beabrillianthhuman.com/59 to the wait list, because if you are interested in going further, maybe you've already got basic training, or you've had some other training with me at some point, or you just really want to go deeper with MPA, then you can sign up for the wait list. There'll be a link there on the page with this episode of how you can sign up. And I'll let you know when, or make sure that you know when I launch the advanced training very, very soon. So make sure you go ahead and do that if you're kind of thinking, ooh, that sounds good in my life. I'd like to have an agenda-free non-stick life. That would be fantastic. That would be the great way to go. So what I hope to do in this section really is to sort of talk about what are these guiding lights, give you some examples so you can get a sense of what I mean by them, so that in what we'll do now is go into sort of give you some advice on how you can find your guiding lights. So if you've been around, say, the coaching world or the personal development world for some time, and you hear words like values and principles and things, then you probably come across advice to sort of get a piece of paper out, and basically think about what your values are, make a list, write it down. Now, that is valid, I would say, to a point, but what I've found for myself and other people that I've spoken to, it's yes, that can work, and maybe the sort of person with that approach really works. But I found that kind of mental approach, that sort of thinking, figuring out approach to these kind of things rarely means you find ones that truly connect. Why? Because as we go back to the MPA guiding lights, often you'll find that there's various dogma, shoulds. This is what I'm supposed to think. This is what the world says is a good value to have, tends to kick in. So my invitation, or my best advice really when it comes to finding your guiding lights, is to use inquiry. Now, inquiry for me, again, is not about figuring out. That the principles of inquiry is you ask the question and let the answer find you. So it's much more of about being in receptive mode to discovering what the answer is, allowing it to find you. And one of the principles of that really is that to understand that whatever your guiding lights are, they're already there inside you. You know, whatever it is, if you think about it in terms of what matters, and that would be a good question to set off the inquiry, is what matters to me in this situation. And with inquiry, you'd ask the question and be still. Just literally, what matters to me, and wait and let the answers find you. They might find you as a feeling initially. They might find you as a picture or a memory. And from that, then it will unravel, and a form or a way of languaging, if you like, a particular guiding light will come to you. But the thing is, you will feel it. It won't just be a mental tick. There'll be an agreement in your gut, in your body, in your heart, and in your mind. It's just gonna feel, not just in a purely emotional sense, it's gonna feel like, yes, that's me. That feels like me. It will be a good guiding principle, a good guiding light for me. So start with the idea that it's already in you, and then use inquiry. You know, what matters to me? We could even ask, you know, what is my guiding light? And it's good if you make it specific to a specific situation, as I said, because guiding lights can be, you know, contextual. And then from there, the unraveling will be a natural process, really. Now, MPA can certainly help you. One of the things about MPA is its DNA, if you like, are based on those principles of animation, no agenda, no dogma, which will in and of itself mean that the doors of your mind will be wide open. That makes you so much more receptive when it comes to inquiry. So you can use the MPA process alongside the inquiry to help you really open into that. Again, if you haven't already downloaded the sheet, you can go and do that. Again, go to joelyoungmpa.com or to today's show notes, and you'll see a link all over everything that I do. It's got a link so you can download the sheet for free. I want you to get it in your hands, which will give you the words to the process. And also an invitation to come and get the basic training, which is our core training. And the first step, if you want to find out more, will help you know how to use it in this context. But the way I would see it help you is even just if you just do some MPA before you start. So I'd think about, you know, when it comes to my guiding lights, you know, what would I like to experience, which is a version of there's two questions with MPA. Question one, what would I like to experience? That's question two, actually. But then from there, you just go through the process, which is you have a spew, you can write it out, see what comes up, and then doing the MPA on whatever the keyword or cookie cutter is will, will help you to really align with the vibration that makes you the most open you can be before you go into the inquiry. So it's a great pre-activity setting process, MPA can be, and this is a context where it would work really well for there. And then once you have some, you might maybe write them down or make a note of what comes to you in relation to what are your guiding lights. Then it's really a matter of trying them out, experiencing them, and then seeing how they feel. So, you know, and the question really is, are they working? You might write something down. And this is true. Say you've done the more kind of digital approach of just writing a list from your mind. This is where if you try them out, you'll find out pretty quickly if they work for you, or if they you know, you find these graunches in them when you use them, or they're just not effective. Then it means that you need to either clarify them. It might be about getting clear on what they are, or amend them to change them. Again, if you've got no dogma, you can easily throw them out, right? It's like, that's not working, throw it out, start again. Start with a blank piece of paper, metaphorically. You know, what really matters to me in this situation. It can give you a sense. And you'll find that, you know, you might need to do it quite live if you've got a decision, say, looming with you right now that you're wrestling with. it might be, well, this is just about making the decision. Well, it is, but if you bring in the guiding light principle, the idea of having a guiding light, you can say, well, that's something that I can take forward out of this particular decision I'm working on and apply this guiding light in other similar contexts. And you may find, as I did, that actually that makes the thing a whole lot easier. And one of the things, if you find, say, that you're actually pretty aware of what those guiding lights are, and it pops out pretty easily, then what do you do? Well, once you find your guiding lights, then it's really about making it more conscious. So the more you can bring it consciously to play. So in the early days with Is It Kind to Me, I would literally stop and ask, is it kind to me? Literally to myself, is it kind to me? I would ask the questions. That was because I had to bring the practice of consciously applying the guiding light in different situations. And then as you practice it, like any practice, it moves from that sort of, they call it unconscious competence, where you know what it is that you need to do, but you need to practice it, to unconscious competence, which is where it's automatic. So for me, that Is It Kind to Me is more automatic now. Occasionally I might need to specifically say it, but once you find them, or if you know what they are, but maybe you're not using them often, then it's that bringing more consciousness, more positive action to actually invoking them in different situations. And then again, the process, as is with all of life, is refining. If you need to add something, remove something, if you find as you bring more consciousness to it, because it may be that you've got a legacy, something which you might say, oh, that's a guiding light I've already been using. It's good to run it through the test with where you're at in your life now, because we can, I would question, is it kind to me? I mean, regularly does that still working for me? Yes, it still does. Okay, great. But it may be at times like, is it kind was one that lasted for a long time before that. It was like, that's not really always hitting the mark. So there must be something else. So if you find that you've got one that you're kind of aware of, maybe you haven't been using it, you start using it and you hit the sort of, oh, I'm not sure it's working. That's where you can sort of, is there anything I need to add to it, amend it, change it? Because the more you clarify these guiding lights and then practice them and bring them into your life, the easier it will be for you to navigate this life, which is a series of decisions, in a way which is both fluid, fulfilling, because it keeps you connected to you. All right. That's it for today. I hope you found this episode inspiring, useful. It's given you pause for thought. Do make sure, if it resonates with you, go ahead and do it. It doesn't take long just to sort of ask the question, what really matters to me in this situation? Close your eyes. If that helps you, let the answer find you. Write it down. Give it a whirl. Give it a try. And see how that will help you move forward in making your decisions. As ever, if you haven't subscribed already to this podcast, why haven't you subscribed? Do it now. I would love you to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. It just takes a calorie to click that button. And it means, you can be let know when each episode comes out. And you can subscribe on all the usual platforms. If you're on YouTube, you know how to do it. If you're on iTunes, you know how to do it. Hit that subscribe button and you'll be notified when each of these new episodes come out. What else I need to say to you? Oh yes, and tell people about it. I'd love you to share it. If you like what you've heard today, go and tell someone. If you think it will help them, if you've got someone who's struggling with decisions, say, well, there's this great podcast called the Be a Brilliant Human, or Be a Brilliant Human with Joel Young. Go search it on your favorite podcast platform, or send them to beabrillianthuman.com, the website, and they can listen to it. Check out the show notes and even check out the other 2 episodes that I mentioned. Well, actually, I mentioned 3, so there'll be 3 in the notes today. Episodes that are there that can support them. So do the kindness to them, if it's kind to you, of telling them about this episode and this podcast. And let me know if you do that. Hit me up on social media at Joel Young MPA for the most part, and places like Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook as well. And MPA Rocks is the page on Facebook, as well as there is a beabrillianthuman.com page on Facebook as well. Go to those places. And just let me know. Say, hey, I shared your podcast. And I would love to be able to thank you personally for that. If you've got any ideas that you would like or things you'd like me to share on the show or to talk about on the show, again, you can always let me know. In fact, on the website, on the BABrilliantHuman.com website, there's a button you can press and leave me a voice message. And, you know, I can put that into the show. If that's something, if you're okay with that, let me know. If you want to ask a question, it'd be great to have some listeners' questions that I could answer. That'd be a great show, actually. So what's on your mind? Let me know. What would you like to, what's your dilemmas? What's happening in your life that you could use with some support with? Reach out and let me know. Right, that's me for today. Have a fantastic week. We're rocking along in November already. Here in the UK, we're back in lockdown. Oh, the joys. But yeah, take care of yourselves. Big hugs to you. And all that remains is to cue the moo.